Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas podcast from still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, come to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. Joining me down there in Decatur, Georgia, my good friend, University of North Georgia alumni, Matt Green is here. Matt, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, sir. Excuse me. Good evening, sir. How's it going?
It's been a tough week for the Everything School HQ slander on your end. Tennessee baseball national champions, college football playoff berth clinched here in football, and basketball is number 2 in KenPom.
They watered down the playoff field. That's the only reason the Vols are in this thing.
You did this. You know you're responsible. Like, you're responsible.
Be honest with ourselves, though. Tennessee didn't accomplish anything new. It's just the trophy. They changed the parameters.
Wow,
that's factual. I mean, I'm not hating. They're the 7th ranked team in the country. They're really good, but they still wouldn't be a playoff team.
Wow.
Also, I don't know.
You couldn't give Tennessee fans 24 hours, Matt Green. You couldn't even make it a full 24.
I'll get into it later, but this would be such a great year for the 14 playoff. But I'll get into it. I'll wait for the playoff talk. But man, unless you just want to get into it right now.
No, we don't. We don't need to get into the playoff talk right now.
Coming in too hot.
We're coming in too hot. We always need to start with the Vols and the Dogs before we get into the broad scope of how things go. But I've written extensively about it this weekend. It was a wild game for both of our teams on Friday and Saturday night, respectively. Friday night for your team and Saturday afternoon for the Vols. But let's start, obviously, with the Tennessee focus here, Matt Green. Tennessee 36, Vanderbilt 23. Obviously. Before I dive into what I saw on Saturday afternoon, what did you see? And how much did you want to text me when Vanderbilt went up 14-0, or even just the 100-yard kickoff return for a touchdown for Vandy? How much did you have to restrain from being like, hey, like the eyes emoji text over to me?
I will say, sir, our relationship has changed through the years. You didn't text me at all during any of the Georgia Tech games. So, I'm not that kind of a dunk on people kind of fan, kick them while their team's down type of guy. So, since you respected me on Friday night, I was definitely not going to disrespect you. But I obviously text my brother. You see Tennessee is down 14-0? No, but yeah, I mean, that was insane that it got off to that quick of a start, especially the pick six. Or wait, was it a pick six?
No, there was not a pick six. It was a kickoff return.
Return for the touchdown. Yeah. And then the interception.
Yes.
It's like it's starting to set up exactly.
No, it was a fumble first. Dylan Sampson
fumbled
on
the first turnover?
Yes. And then Nico had an interception on a beep. It was basically a long punt.
Then that's what it was. And then so it's like it was already like setting up how the Alabama upset started, right? You got in that 14-0 lead. But I will say this is why I don't miss the noon slot. Like, not saying it's a permanent thing, Georgia Tech playing on Friday night, but I couldn't keep too many eyes on Tennessee Vanderbilt live because there are just so many great rivalry games happening, like Michigan, Ohio State, and South Carolina, Clemson. It's like it definitely took a back seat, but it's like in my 2 screens, I'm watching 3 games on 2 screens basically, so I'm keeping up with it, but it definitely sat on the back burner, especially once Tennessee started to take care of business. It's funny. I feel like that Dante Thornton. Was it the Oklahoma game that he had the long one that was like the same type play, like a 10-yard slant that he took like 60 yards, 70 yards to the house?
It wasn't that. It was the Oklahoma game, but he did not go that far. I mean, this was an 86-yarder.
Yeah, it was like a 50-yard touchdown or something. Yeah, it seemed a lot like that one in terms of the play and also just in terms of like the tone of the game.
That was the second one, though. He had won a 28-yarder first on his first slant. That was the second TD.
But that was the one that gave Tennessee the lead, though. The long one, wasn't it?
It gave him.
I was feeling like just the tone of the game changed once that 80-yard touchdown happened.
I do not think they were in the lead, but it did change the tone. If I remember correctly.
Let's see. I got the box score. What is it? Thornton 80. Is it 86? So that made it
86.
17-17.
It tied it up at 17. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and it felt different after that.
Mhm.
Like, and then Tennessee just kind of controlled the game from there. But yeah, it started to feel like some weird Vandy stuff. I was wondering if they had the magic still, but Tennessee took care of business. One of Nico's better games actually connected on a deep ball in this one, or at least got a pass interference. Like that's been my biggest criticism of him, and that's like what this Tennessee offense is like waiting to unleash. Is like Hendon Hooker was good for like one or two of those deep balls in a game, and that just made that offense so explosive. And then with the way they run the ball this year, and Dylan Sampson with another great game, how did they not get Dylan Sampson a touchdown? Like that's just unacceptable. What did he have a record going? And he doesn't get a touchdown in this game. But 178 yards. If Nico's hitting those deep shots, this offense is like what people have waited for it to be. But this was a good performance offensively, but nothing like that makes you think, oh, now Tennessee's figured it out necessarily. But I don't know. It was an encouraging performance, I thought, for sure.
I think it actually is pretty close. It's closer to the offensive figure himself out, because what doesn't have to happen for this passing game, it's not like they need 5 to 6 deep bombs a game to look closer to 2022. They just need a couple. Like, that's the thing that you forget in 2022. It's not like Hendon Hooker was just only hitting deep shots. It's just the ones that he hit were memorable, like the Jalen Hyatt ones. Like everyone remembers the Alabama game because that was just ridiculous what Jalen Hyatt was doing with his 5 TDs. Like that's never. I mean, that's just going to be almost impossible to replicate. Like that was just an all-time performance that, I mean, it's just not the norm in college football. But against Kentucky, where you scheme Hyatt open a time or two and you have a couple big plays, that's the one where it is more replicable. And I look at this game as actually pretty close to like an all systems go Tennessee, because what I've said all year long with this offense, and again, it's so complicated because I think Dylan Sampson's been really good. Like you mentioned, he's rushed for 11 straight games with a touchdown, did not get in the end zone for this one, still had over 7 yards to carry. I mean, he breaks the single season rushing record for Tennessee. He already has the rushing touchdown record with 22. He breaks Travis Stevens' record in 2001 here. Tennessee has been the second best second half rushing team in FBS this season, and they're only behind Army in that stat. So like he's just right there all year long. He's been incredible when they needed him in the second half. 256 carries, nearly 1,500 yards. Like it's the best single season Tennessee running back season in the 21st century for the Vols, no question.
However, Walker committee not impressed.
No, look, that's another conversation for another day. But
can you tell me who the third finalist was?
Caleb Johnson.
No, Caleb Johnson and Ashton Jeanty were the justified ones. Who's the third one?
Omarion Hampton from North Carolina.
Great running back, but I don't know. I'm putting Dylan Sampson in there.
I would agree. But the thing is, Tennessee is going to continue to run the football well. Next year, if Dylan Sampson's off to the NFL, Tennessee's going to run the ball well. Tennessee ran the ball well last year with Jalen Wright. They ran the ball well with Tion Evans. The first year, they ran the ball well with Jalen Wright, Jabari Small, and Dylan Sampson in 2022. Part of this offense and part of the scheme is like Tennessee is going to be able to run the ball. Like that has been a key portion of what this Tennessee offense does year in, year out under Heupel. Like that's going to continue to happen until it's proven otherwise. So that's not to discredit what Dylan Sampson's done, because Dylan Sampson's best quality this year is his consistency and his durability, which has been unbelievable all season long. But the reason that there is so much shine on Dylan Sampson this year is because the offense as a whole hasn't been clicking. Like it's like that thing where Miles Kitzman has been a great addition in the portal for Tennessee as a walk-on from Alabama. He's been huge for them. But if you look at the end of the game, like against Georgia, if he leads Tennessee in receiving yards, then you had a bad day. And that means the offense isn't doing what it needs to do. They can be contributors, but ultimately for this Tennessee offense to look anywhere close to 2022, that 2022 team ran the ball well, but you have to have the vertical passing game. Like this all doesn't, like you can't get to where it needs to be without the vertical passing game. So now that is back, like I've written, and we saw, you mentioned, Dante Thornton is just a game changer. He has 6 TDs on 25 catches this year. Like he is just a game changer for Tennessee. And without him in this game, I don't know if Tennessee gets back in this game. He 1 for 86, 1 for 28. He's important in a lot of ways, and part of it is in that Jalen Hyatt thing where he doesn't need to be targeted a bunch. You just need to give him 4 targets. If he brings in 2 of them, guess what? His average time, he's going to do something with the ball. Like, he is just so good in space, and he's so good after the catch that good things happen when Dante Thornton is in the game and Dante Thornton gets the ball. So I think that is just, it's just amazing. If you look at Tennessee's 2 losses this year, the only 2 games Tennessee's lost, the receivers average less than 10 yards per reception in those games. Against
Dante Thornton, 25.9 yards per catch on the season.
Yeah, it's just, he's incredible. Like, he's right there in the big play stratosphere of Ryan Williams and Trey Harris and company. Like, he's a game changer for Tennessee. When he makes plays in the game,
he's a game changer. Let's just bump the brakes.
He is a game changer in that way. Like, the stats speak for themselves. When he gets the ball, good things happen. And Dante Thornton has been Tennessee's best receiver all season long. And you saw why, again, he bailed out Tennessee in a way with these big plays and getting him out of a hole that some of it, the offense stuck for themselves. Some of it was obviously the kick return, this and the other. But Tennessee deserves credit. So Tennessee now has won 10 games, regular season games, 2 of the last 3 years. This hasn't happened since 2001 and 2003 under Fulmer. Heupel had, like, this was a huge opportunity for Heupel, and we talked about it in our preview show, like, why this is such a big game for this program. Everything's right in front of you. Like, this is a great way to end the year while all these other teams have fallen all around you, playing big games. All you have is UTEP and Vanderbilt. You should be able to win both these games and make it into the CFP. Everything's aligned really nicely for you here, and they did it. Heupel deserves credit for, hey, weathering the storm. This was 14-0 on the road against a team that beat Alabama at home. Like, this could have gone the way it went against South Carolina 2 years ago. This could have been a situation where Tennessee doesn't get up off the mat and just bounce back. Guess what? Nico Yamayava played his best game of the year. Like, Nico was throwing darts all throughout this game. This was, outside the interception, this was the best 4 straight quarters of football Nico has played all year long. And like I said, the last 20 quarters of Nico has been a really good quarterback. Nico is going to be just fine. Nico was playing really good football. He ran the ball extremely well. He had 7 yards to carry in this game. He had several design runs that were really good. I was extremely impressed with the way Nico played in this football game. And look, the Tennessee defense shut out Vanderbilt in the second and third quarter. They came back and bounced back from what happened in Athens 2 weeks ago. I thought they controlled a lot of this game and really limited what Diego Pavia and company could do. And look, Tennessee did what they had to do, but Heupel deserves a lot of credit for, hey, people wondered how this was going to go. He's in the playoff in year 4, first time, won 30 games now in 3 years at Tennessee. And based on where Tennessee's been the last 10 and really where they've been the last 20, it's a really good spot to be in. So kudos to Heupel and company, because now we'll see if they host. We'll get into why or why not they should here a little bit later. But I don't know. By and large, Matt Green, Tennessee in the playoff and did what they needed to do here.
See, I respect your take from this game, and it's obviously they took care of business, bounced back in a rival, especially a rivalry game. This doesn't even feel like a rivalry game. It is, but it isn't. Like, it doesn't even feel like as big of a game as Georgia Tech. That's something that, like, well, yeah, Georgia Tech used to win championships and used to like compete with Georgia on the recruiting trail and stuff. I don't know that Vanderbilt's ever been there at any time, really competing with Tennessee. But
maybe a little bit of the James Franklin years.
Yeah, something like small sample size like that. But it ultimately, like, Tennessee's they're on a different program than Vanderbilt. So I still, this is the best Vanderbilt team we've seen in years, but I'm still like, it's Vanderbilt, right? So I can't all of a sudden say like Tennessee's figured things out and like this is the team. I think for this team to make noise in the playoffs, like, they're going to have to play better than we've seen them play to this point. Like, they're going to have to do something they haven't done to this point. And I think you can make that case for a lot of teams. Like Georgia, you probably can't drop a shit ton of passes, and you probably can't have an inept run game if you're going to make noise in the playoffs, right? So, like, there's teams that have those things. Like, you're going to have to do some things a little better than you've done. There's a lot of flawed teams out there. But I think Tennessee is one of those. Like, this is a good win. But if they actually make noise in the playoffs, it's going to be because they're playing better than we've seen them all season. Because this passing offense, this passing game has just still been, a lot to be desired. Like, this is the most points they've scored in an SEC game all year, right? 36 and 33 against Vanderbilt and Mississippi State. Like, Vanderbilt isn't down there, Mississippi State, where they usually are, but like, this offense still has a lot to prove, I think, through 12 games this season. And like I was saying, like, kind of hating, like, obviously it's a really good team. They're ranked number 7 right now, but they haven't actually accomplished anything that they hadn't previously done. Now they get to decide it on the field. And maybe they're one of those teams that benefits from this the most because they have a first-year starting quarterback that, as the season's gone along, maybe by the time we get to December, he is ready for the big time. Because in terms of teams expecting something they haven't seen from their team through 12 games, Tennessee is one that can more reasonably expect, this quarterback, he was a 5-star for a reason. We've seen, times where he's looked really good and thrown really good balls. So this could be the time he takes the step, but they are going to have to take a step if they're going to make some noise in the playoff.
I think it's there, and you're seeing the recipe. Dylan Sampson's going to be good. I think Mike Matthews has a touchdown in this game. He got a lot of run, 5-star freshman. He's coming on a little bit. Chris Brazzell had a couple big catches in this game. So I'm not saying the offense is going to be 2022 all of a sudden, but I do think, to your point, like, this is the highest SEC turnout here points-wise, and just watching the game as someone who's watched all these games, watched them back the next day, this was the best the offenses looked for 4 quarters, where it's all of it. And that was like the broader point about Sampson. It's like, if Sampson and Kitzelman have been great stories for Tennessee this year, but for Tennessee to ultimately get where they need to go, like, it has to be the downfield stuff. It has to be the explosive plays, because if you don't have the explosive plays, all that stuff doesn't matter, because you can't win it all playing that way. You can win some big games. You can go to Oklahoma and win. You can be in some games and steal some games there. But if you actually want to win a national title, if you want to beat Georgia on the road in Athens, those plays that Dante Thornton made in the first half against Vanderbilt on the road, that had to happen in Athens. And that didn't happen. So you didn't win. Like, that is part of it. You saw Georgia Tech. Like, the way Georgia Tech plays, Tennessee can't play that way. Tennessee can't run their varied triple option stuff and give Georgia problems that way. So beat Georgia the way, or beat Ohio State if that's who they get matched up. Or Oregon, whatever. If they're going to, Happy Valley and Penn State, if they're going to do that, the only way to do that is Dante Thornton, Chris Brazzell, and Squirrel White, Chaz Nimrod. They have to make plays down the field. If those explosive plays don't pop up, and we're not asking for 5 to 7 a game. You need 2 to 3. You need 2 to 3 that break open, that give the offense some breathing room, give Nico some confidence, give the offense confidence, and scare the defense enough that, like, this is still possible, and that Tennessee has the guys outside that scare you and make this offense feel as complete as it did in 2022.
Could you imagine if I told you, went a time machine back to August and told you Dylan Sampson's going to have 1,400, almost 1,500 yards rushing and 22 touchdowns, and Tennessee's going to have like the number 1 scoring defense in the SEC? Can you imagine how good you would have thought? You would have thought this was a 13-0 number 1 team in the country. Like, remember what the preseason talk about Nico was. Like, if you got that type of running game and that kind of defense,
well, that means
the
running game wouldn't be that way, though. The running game wouldn't be that way if Nico was having a Heisman year all throughout.
I mean, the numbers, you can still have a 1,400-yard rusher and have an explosive pass game.
They were the second half stuff was that was Dylan Sampson
you saw like Najee Harris like with Alabama in 2020. Like,
I'm saying Dylan Sampson's numbers would still be good, but they would not be what they are right now.
I don't know. I think regardless, you can have a 3-headed monster with an elite passing game, elite running game, like elite receiver.
Yeah.
You can.
Tennessee hasn't had a 3-headed monster though. They've had just the Dylan Sampson show.
No, I'm just saying teams have done it. Like, you can have a big time stats guy at quarterback, running back, and receiver. Like,
Tennessee did it in 22.
Alabama in 2020 arguably should have had 3 Heisman finalists on their roster that year. Like, if I would have just told you that their running game would have been that good, I don't think there's a Tennessee fan in the world that would have thought they had any losses. Because, I mean, Nico was thought to be the best quarterback in the country, potentially.
Well, I would still think the Georgia one until I see it to believe it on that in that regard. But I also would say, like, I don't think the best version of this team is when they're run first, or when they're running. If their running game is the first thing you think about with this offense, or the running back is the first thing you think about this offense, then I don't think
you need
the
to
offense
forget about the running back, and then boom,
yes,
right up the middle for 40 yards.
correct. That is what I think is the best version of the Tennessee offense.
I hear you.
But that's, again, Dylan Sampson, great season. He's been great.
So you're telling me if I would have told you Dylan Sampson had like 1,500 yards, 22 touchdowns, and y'all have the number 1 scoring defense in the SEC, you're like 10-2. That's what you're. That's what
I
you're
would have
telling
said
me?
the offense isn't having the kind of year. I would say the passing game is clearly not very good then.
What? Just because you have a 1,400-yard rusher, that means your passing game can't be good?
I think that would be a problem. Yes.
I don't know
Dylan
about
Sampson's
that.
have you seen how many more carries he's had than just even Jalen Wright last year? Like, it's just, let me pull up the 2022
No, that's fair.
stats. Let me pull up the rushing offense for 2022. So
But
Tennessee
he could also, if the passing
was-
game was elite, he could also have.
they were
1,400
26th. So Tennessee was 26th in rushing nationally in 2022. And that's more of where you want to be. You want to be
No,
somewhere
that's
closer to
fair.
that top 20.
But if he had 1,400 yards and their passing game is good, then maybe he's averaging 7.5 yards a carry, and he doesn't have as many carries. But so you,
I mean,
you
he
wouldn't
averaged that. He's
automatically-
averaging close to that right
you
now.
would
He's averaging over 5
automatically
yards a carry
assume-
right now on a bunch of
you would-
carries.
That's what I'm saying. He's at 5.8 on the season. If he was at like 7.5, like he could have that on however many less carries. Like you're just telling me if I told you he had 1,500 yards rushing, that your first thing would have been negative.
I
You're
would
like,
have.
Nico's not any good then.
I would have thought that means the passing game had problems. Yes, that's where my mind would go first.
Interesting. Fair
Because
enough.
I think the best version, like I said, to put a bow on it, the vertical passing game has to be a part of it, and that has to be the biggest. That has to be the big play threat for. That's what gets this all moving in the right direction, and then the rushing attack.
See, but you're approaching this from how Tennessee has played this season. There's not.
I mean,
really
they played it last year this way too.
You
Jalen Wright
gotta
was the show
remember-
last year.
You got to remember how you people think. You Tennessee people, y'all think this Heupel offense is going to be elite every single year. Like there's a notion that last year Joe Milton was just so bad. There's a reason that was the down. Like coming into the season, it's Heupel as an offense. Heupel is a genius. Like this offense is just going to be go go go. People kind of still talk about it, even though this offense has had its struggles. Like no one should really think this offense is good, to be honest. Like they average like 23 points a game in SEC play or something this year. But it's the fact that Nico is a 5-star and Heupel's offense is like a cheat code that people are kind of still assuming it's going to come. And it could potentially come. I'm not ruling it out. But to this point, it hasn't really been there. And I think it's the Heupel reputation and all that makes people think it's going to be there. But I mean, so before the season, there was no questioning how good this offense was going to be, as far as I'm concerned. Like, and especially with how high the ceiling was potentially for Nico as well. I don't know. That's shocking to me that you would be disappointed by that. But it's a hypothetical.
It's not even really disappointing because they just went 10-2 playing that way. So it's not even that I'm disappointed. It's just more of like, that's where my mind would go. I've seen both sides of this. And I think I don't know. I think in a perfect world, you want a trio. Because I still worry about the tread on Dylan Sampson's tires now for a playoff run here. And where he's at. I always keep Kerryon Johnson in 2016 in the back of my mind for Auburn down the stretch. And I think part of the appeal, I mean, there's a reason NFL teams, they all have trios of backs. They all like to rotate. Georgia rotates. Like there is something, like there is a strong part of me that's like the rotation's the way to go. Like if you can afford to rotate, and I mean, I think there would have been more rotation if Cam Seldon doesn't get hurt early on this spring, and he's not really a factor all year long, which was not something that
Georgia
any
hasn't had as good of a running game. Georgia hasn't had as good of a running game, as good of a running back in like 5, 6, 7 years as Dylan Sampson, though. If you have a guy that good, I mean, I think you just keep feeding him.
Yeah, but I also think you kept feeding him because you didn't trust your offensive line. You didn't trust your receivers. You didn't trust your vertical passing game. You didn't trust a lot of stuff. And Dylan was able to do all that. And that's the thing, is Dylan was able to pick up the slack. Dylan was able to step up when everything around him at times this year was not working offensively. Like it'd be the quarterback one week, it'd be the offensive line one week, it'd be the receivers. But the running game and Dylan Sampson, and again, the consistency and the durability of Dylan Sampson has been the story of this Tennessee offense this year. It's why he should have been a finalist for the Doak Award this year. Dylan Sampson, best season of any Vol running back in the 21st century. But for Tennessee's offense to really feel like it's clicking, to be higher up in the rankings, to everything else, it's still the quarterback. This is still a quarterback-driven sport. It's still a offense that a quarterback operating at a high level like Hendon Hooker did in 2022 and in the back half of the 2021 season is a championship level humming offense. We just didn't see that 2022 team with this kind of defense.
Who's that list of best Tennessee running back seasons in the 21st century? Do you have any?
I mean, it's him.
That pop
It's
off?
Travis Stevens. Alvin Kamara had one.
Kamara, Arian Foster. Did he have a big season?
I don't think he had like his number. I would have to go back and look at if he actually had like a crazy number season. But Eric Gray, sneaky had before he transferred one of those Pruitt years. He had some pretty good.
I know Montario Hardesty was always a guy.
Montario
Hardesty,
he had absolutely.
I don't know if he had a big. He may have had 1,000-yard season, maybe. I'll leave you with this, sir. This is the last thing I'll say. Najee Harris in 2020 had 1,466 yards, 26 touchdowns. And they still had a quarterback that threw for 4,500 yards, 40 touchdowns, and the receiver that won the Heisman. So I'm just saying, if I would have heard Dylan Sampson had 1,400 yards rushing, I'm thinking, damn, Tennessee. And this is the number one ranked defense in the SEC. I'm thinking, damn, this Tennessee team is the number one team in the country. And I got to sit through talking to Chase Thomas twice a week. But I don't know. Now they're going to be like, what, the 7 seed, 8, 9 seed?
We'll see.
We shall see.
They should be an 8 seed, but we'll see if the committee does the right thing. I think they should be an 8 seed, but it's going to come down to Ohio State or Tennessee. I think they're locked is the way I see the rankings. But we'll get into it in a second here, Matt Green. Friday night, though, the reason I wasn't texting you is, I don't have my phone around me during games a lot. I keep my phone away so I can take notes and all that. But I was back in Atlanta watching the game surrounded by Georgia fans. And Georgia Tech, we were watching that as a family. And I'm just, trying to keep my mind off Tennessee, Vanderbilt 12 hours later. But what say you in one of the craziest Georgia games I've watched from start to finish in a very long time? But I immediately did think of you after because of how long this game went, where I'm like, is Matt going to do an instant reaction show after this game? Because this man, he's built different if he does it. Like, Matt, I don't know if even I could do that. I don't know if that was in me, but kudos to you, sir, because that was my immediate thought as this was going on. Because that was something I was going to text you at the end where I was like, are you going to be up for this? Are you going to be able to do a reaction show? Because I feel like you lost your voice back and forth throughout this game.
Absolutely, sir. Definitely did a reaction show, as I do after every game on the Georgia Voice of College Football. But yeah, man, this was just a roller coaster of emotions. I will say I didn't lose my voice because I don't know. This was one of those games that it was more of a, what is going on? You just keep looking and like, is this really happening right now? We're not doing anything. It's 17-0 at halftime. Okay. I will say as a Georgia fan, I wasn't really worried 17-0. I can't say I wasn't worried 17-0, but I wasn't like, we're definitely going to lose 17-0 because it's like, this team's had a lot of slow starts on the season. This is kind of what they've been doing. This right here is a bigger hole we're digging ourselves. This is a bold strategy. We'll see how it works. But then after the first 3 and out to start the second half, that's when I was like, okay, now I'm a little worried. Like now you come out of the half, make it 17-7, and it's like, okay, no big deal. But I went back and looked at the first half, at the drives, first half, second half, because after that 3 and out to start the second half, they went on 6 straight touchdown drives. 2 of those are in overtime, but like the offense really didn't get stopped. So I went back and looked in the first half because I'm like, how can the offense be like unstoppable for 2 quarters and in overtime and just can't do anything in the first half? You had the first drive of the game, 3 and out. That's the one where Arian Smith drops the third down slant. It's like, That's now 3 different games Georgia's had this year. On the first drive of the game has been a 3 and out, and it's because of an Arian Smith drop. Like the other 2, the Alabama and Tennessee ones, were way bigger drops, way bigger plays, like 50 yards and 40 yards. But this is the kind of thing that people start blaming Carson Beck because of the offensive struggles. And it's like, you don't even understand the exponential effect that has on the team when it's first down of the game. Like you just convert easy first down, like especially how like loose they're playing. Like you just pick up, 3rd and 3, pick up an easy 6 yards, like, and then you just get some momentum, start going up tempo or something. So that was the first one. The second one was 12 for 60 yards, and you got stopped on the 4th down, which was another thing. Georgia's trying to go quick on 3rd and 1, and they had to fix the chains. Like they said something to repair the chains. So Kirby's like, what is happening here? So that's no excuse. You get stopped on 2 straight from 1 yard. And then you have the 3 and out, and Beck gets sacked. And then you're having your best drive of the game, 5 yards for 38 yards, and Dominic Lovett fumbles. And then you get the ball back with 30 seconds in the first half. You go 6 plays, 40 yards in 30 seconds, and set up a 50-yard field goal, and you miss it going into the half. So it's like this offense, I feel like, stops itself. And then just to keep it going, the first drive of the second half is the 3 and out for 6 yards when Dominic Lovett drops the 30-yard back shoulder throw down the sideline. So many times this Georgia offense is stopping itself. It's maddening, honestly. And so it feels like something that's correctable, but it's also something you've done now for 12 games. So this is just who you are. And I think as frustrating as the offense is at times, I don't think the defense gets enough blame for like a lot of these slow starts in these games. Because if you just go back and look at some of these Georgia games, even this one, you got 5 drives in the entire second half. You scored touchdowns on 4 of them. And it was a miraculous comeback because you gave up a 10-minute drive at one point. Luckily, they were able to force a field goal on that drive. But the defense just not being able to get off the field, 260 rushing yards for Georgia Tech, almost doubled them up. I want to say time of possession. I had it written down somewhere. I'm not sure. It was like 40-20 almost in time of possession. Like so much of that is on the defense. Like the
37-22.
Okay. Like so many of the games, the offense is fairly efficient when it comes to like points per drive and things like that. But this team is not getting a lot of possessions in a lot of these games. And it's because I haven't even looked at the stats. I know Georgia's given up like 120 a game, 122 a game on the ground coming in. They just gave up 260. So I know it went up. So like this run defense hasn't been good. The run offense hasn't been good. Your receivers are dropping passes, and
you had 1 sack though.
Championship. Say that again.
And just 1 sack. Like I think that's the other big story here with Georgia, and this is something I was telling the family and talking about just what this Georgia team is, because that's something that I think has been like a key for this year as a whole. Is just like, I think it's been hard for some folks to just accept who teams are. Like I think Tennessee fans have struggled to accept certain limitations with this offense. I think some people have struggled to accept, hey, Georgia just doesn't have the dudes on the defensive line this year that scare you. Mykel Williams is not Trayvon Walker, or you don't have a Jalen Carter in the middle. You have talent, but you don't have difference makers who are getting to after the quarterback, who are ending drives early, who can get off the field. Because that's the thing, is like you talk about the time possession, Georgia can get off the field. Tech just kept converting, and Haynes King ran the ball 24 times. Like it was pretty bonkers to see how many carries that dude took. Some shots in this game, and they used a bunch of motion. Georgia Tech did a lot of stuff. Buster Faulkner, obviously a lot of familiarity with Kirby and the staff, but that is something that stood out to me. Is like, you brought up the receivers. The receiver stuff's not going to change when you spend on the portal and like the Colby Young and Ra Thomas deal, and they're both gone. Well, like what did you expect? Like that's part of the deal. Like you're kind of, and how many years
Maybe
have you seen
permanently?
Well, how long have you seen Arian Smith be this version of Arian Smith? At a certain point, this is what he is. He's going to make some good plays. He's going to have some excruciating drops.
Yeah, I compare Arian Smith to like an Adam Duvall,
Yeah.
If for baseball fans out there, like Adam Duvall is an excellent platoon outfielder. Get him in there when you got a nice pitching lefty righty matchup. But if you're gonna get this guy 500 bats, 600 bats at the full season, you're gonna see that he's pretty average, and you don't want to play him for 162 games. Like Arian Smith is a really like dangerous threat as a playmaker, like a legit 10 100 meters type speed. But if you're forced to like give this guy like 10 targets a game or something and be one of your go-to guys in your offense, he's just not that. And even in this game, obviously he had the drops, but he had the 30, was it a 30-yard, like 30, 40-yard reverse that was, one of the bigger plays offensively to that point in the game. Like, so he has a skill set that's very valuable, but man, when you're dropping passes as much as he does, it's pretty frustrating.
I don't know. I mean, they win. Can I, is this a safe space for me to throw this out here, Matt Green?
Yeah, man.
I'm going to say this this is something I've been thinking about post Georgia Tech. No more half measures on overtime. I think what they did was they kept they wanted to ease old school college football fans into the new 2-point conversion overtime strategy, where it's like, all right, we'll still give them a couple series where they have the normal 25-yard, like they move in and that kind of stuff, and then we'll do the new stuff and see how they like. Let's ease them into it. Let's go ahead and get to the end game where we don't have to do the first two where we pretend it's still the old way of doing things, where you can score and then you go for 2 on the second one and then we start trading 2-point conversions. Let's just start that from the beginning. If you're going to do the penalty kick route, the NHL shootout route anyway, just go all in. Like when we go to overtime, just say it's sudden, like we're doing the 2-point conversion tries right out of the gate, and that's how we're doing this, because that actually annoys me more is that we see what we used to have.
No overtime per period. You're just saying only the 2-point conversion.
Yes. Because
hard
if you're
disagree.
I know you're going to disagree, but there's no point, because most of them are going to get it after the first two anyway, and I'm just like, just if you want to do penalty kicks so bad and you want to limit the snap counts, which I also understand the amount of plays these guys are on the field, just go straight to 2-point conversions. Like, let's just not do that. And also, let's stop making them go back and forth on the side of the field. That was also crazy. Can we not? Like, why do we have to keep going back to both sides of the end zone? That to me is just so silly that we're going back and forth over and over again. And also, you don't get a timeout for every overtime in the 2-point conversion route.
Yeah.
That should also be taken away. What are we doing there? Why do you get everyone gets a timeout, both sides, every 2-point conversion try? That's crazy.
Yeah, that's the 2 rule changes you mentioned. Like, without a doubt, the 2 rule changes they're going to make is you're playing in one end zone for one, and then you don't get a timeout every single time. If you're going to get it, Kirby Smart should definitely be taking it every single time. How are they lined up? All right, let's get a timeout.
Yeah.
Like, that's definitely what you should be doing. That's got to be a rule change moving forward. But I don't know. I hated this. I said, if you want to do the penalty kick thing, we can do 4 downs from the 10. Like, it still feels
that's
like
fine
football.
Too.
It still feels like football.
Just go full penalty kick is what I'm saying. Like, you're already dipping your toes in it. Just do it.
But I don't know. Was this the game of the year? Like, I think from just like
game
an
of the
entertainment,
year.
like from a neutral entertainment value, was it like, I imagine just a comeback, crazy overtime, just the drama of overtime. This is just one of those games. Like, it doesn't mean this the 2 best teams by any means playing in a game, but it's been one of the wildest games of the whole season. So maybe they liked this format, and also I'm sure they got a bunch of extra commercials in when those overtime timeouts and those overtimes moving from one end zone to the other. But I don't know. That LSU game, to me, LSU Texas A&M game a couple years ago was not a problem. It was like, that's a classic. That was an insane game. You remember that insane game where A&M and Texas A&M played? Wow, that rarely happens. That's why it was so amazing. So I don't understand. I don't understand the need for this rule. But no, I'm definitely not in favor of going even further into this just 2-point conversion PK contest.
I don't even think this is the best Georgia game this year.
Was the Alabama game
Yeah,
better?
Georgia, Alabama, because the second half surge and then Alabama. I mean, Georgia almost pulling it off, and then Alabama just stunning him with the Ryan. But like that to me was just that from start to finish was just a shot of adrenaline. Like that, I think I would still take Georgia, Alabama.
Yeah, that was an insane game for sure. Ohio State, Oregon. There's been some
That was good.
crazy games for sure this year, but it's funny. I almost had like famous last words about this game because I told you the only Georgia teams that lose to Tech are the underachieving Georgia teams. Back in 2008, 2014, year one of Kirby Smart.
Same with Vanderbilt, right? It's just a bad omen. Like it's not a good omen.
And if this Georgia team would have lost this game, I think the season completely changed that, yeah, this team underachieved. I don't know that they've underachieved to this point because I'm not sure how good they are, to be honest. Like they're a good team, but like I was saying before, like they lead the nation in drops. They're 14th, 15th in the SEC. They might be last in the SEC in running and rushing yards per game right now. And they're in the college ball playoff and they're in the SEC championship. Like, and the defense has not been as good as advertised too. So it's like all of those things happen, drops, can't run the ball, and your defense has been less than you expected. And this team's still in a position to win a national championship. It's kind of bizarre. And they're in a position to win it like the old fashioned way. Like if this is a 4-team format, like they're still an SEC championship win away from being in the top 4, you know? So it's kind of insane. I think personally, this is going to be a hot take, but if I look at the teams that are going to be in the college football playoff right now, Georgia has as good a quarterback as every single team in the playoff. Like Carson Beck was balling on Friday night. Like Carson Beck, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the best quarterbacks in college football still. Like with what this team has, no running game and receivers dropping the ball, like the throws that this dude was making, like Georgia has the quarterback. That's what I'll say. Georgia has the quarterback to win a national championship. I don't know that they have the receivers or the running game or the defense to win a national championship, but they definitely have the quarterback.
Interesting. I think that's fair. What I would tell you and what would tell Vol fans is like, there's just not an elite team this year. So you just want to be in it because there's just seeding's going to matter. Home games are going to matter. How the thing breaks, like you just want to be in it. And I don't know if that's going to be the case every year because I do think that we're still going to have these elite super teams where they actually do put it all together from the start of the season to the end where you're like, oh yeah, nobody was stopping that team. They just whether it's Ohio State, Georgia next year, Alabama, whatever. There's going to be a team like that where from the start of the season to the end, you're like, wow, they were just a machine from start to finish. They were the best team, this, that, and the other. This is just a year you just want to be in the dance and then see what happens because I think Georgia can win it all. Look, I think if Tennessee's offense looks very close to what it did against Vanderbilt, they can. If they can put 3 of those games together in the playoffs offensively, then yes, the defense is good enough. Samson's good enough that could happen. They're just like if Alabama sneaks in, they can win it all. Jalen Milroe can absolutely go on a heater and win 3 straight games and win a national title. Absolutely.
No, for sure. It feels like Georgia is like the Chargers or something. Like every Chargers game I've watched for the last 3 years comes down to the final drive of the game, and it's either does Herbert throw a pick or does he lead the team down and throw a touchdown, and that decides what happens in that game. It's like Beck, you just feel like if this game's coming down to the wire, you have that quarterback that can get us down the field in 4 plays with a couple chunk throw. You know what I mean? Georgia at least has that guy. Unfortunately, because of the supporting cast this year, there's more and more games that are having to come down to Carson Beck's performance. But I like the past few weeks, I defended Carson Beck through the struggles, and I'm not saying he was not playing terrible football for a few games there, but Carson Beck has definitely righted the ship, and he's clearly not the problem of the offense, and Mike Bobo is definitely not the problem of the offense. But the last thing I'll say, what did you think about the post game Georgia Tech, the embrace with Kirby Smart and Brent Key?
That was cool.
No thoughts? Good for them.
I mean, it wasn't. Should I have stronger thoughts? I just thought it was nice. Long hug, intense game.
Nice, right?
Yeah, it was nice.
I was told this was clean old fashioned hate, sir.
Oh, you're against this?
This was not hate. This is not hateful at all, sir.
I think
you got hate
respect
in your heart. You let it out.
I don't know. We saw a lot of people letting it out on Saturday. So
I don't know.
Friday
Brent
night
Key
was a good
just
appetizer.
talking he was talking about how much he hates Georgia, and now Kirby's just like, oh, here you go, man. Don't feel so bad. No, I'm not really worked up about it, but it was odd. I've never seen that long of an interaction, and like people are showing who's the one that people always talk about a few years ago, watching, was it Blake Corum in Michigan watching, or JJ McCarthy watching the celebration with TCU, and like getting that feeling that's the motivation for next year.
That was JJ McCarthy, yeah.
And now everyone, they post the social media. I watched the celebrate. I don't want that feeling again. Like Brent Key was doing that. I got midfield just like taking it all in, like watching Georgia celebrate. Like this game like destroyed him. Like I'm not saying I'm like roasting Brent Key. That they had an amazing game. If you show me the box score, I would be shocked that Georgia Tech lost that game. But I felt like Georgia Tech was probably the better team for most of this game, and Georgia just somehow found a way to win it. Like it was insane. What was it? They went to 14. Was it 27-13? 27-13 with like 5.5 minutes left, and Georgia somehow comes back to win that game. Kirby with the point chasing early third quarter.
He threw the analytics guy under the bus there in his post-game presser when he was asked about it. He answered in a really funny way. I don't have the quote in front of me, but it was where the numbers where it's like that's a big part of it. And that ended up, well, people were like, oh well, that ended up being the difference, in winning regulation. I was like, folks, Georgia Tech also missed a 25-yard field goal in this game, so that also would have factored in. Georgia Tech missed.
But that had already happened.
But what I'm saying is that still factored in. So yeah, Georgia missed going for 2 there, when they could have just gone for 1 was dumb, and they gave up points. But Georgia Tech also gave up some crazy points.
No, but that's not irrelevant. The missed field goal. But what's relevant, why I don't really care about the point chasing in terms of like saying, oh well, we're down 6, we would have scored a touchdown and kicked the extra point and won the game, is that Georgia Tech scored they scored 2 more times, or they scored at least 1 more touchdown. So if that's the case, they don't just go up whatever. They probably go for 2 in that situation. I would think, like if Georgia doesn't, you know what I mean? If it's a normal game and they have to go up 14. So I think that's the other thing. So it was whatever. It didn't end up costing them, but I think I was definitely surprised to see 17-6, like 10 minutes left in the third quarter, and you're going for 2. I don't know. It was also, I think he did something like that in the Alabama game. I want to say that ended up kind of like in a questionable time going for 2 that kind of ended up changing the dynamic of the score as well. I can't remember off the top of my head, so don't quote me on that. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. But yeah, Georgia Tech, great game. Friday night, I'm here for it. Only the Friday after Thanksgiving though, because that Friday feels like a Saturday. It's like our own personal Saturday. And
they messed up Egg Bowl. Like, let's just admit that you messed it up. Let's put it back on Thursday night. Like, you tried it, no one watched it, no one cared. It was didn't have the same juice. Got to put it back on Thursdays.
No, and I'd be down with A&M Texas, because I think that they said that was on Thanksgiving. I think last time they played it, right?
Yeah,
I'd be down with that on Thanksgiving. Or
I was okay with it. It was nice to have that at night.
Friday.
I wasn't opposed to that one. Like that one was fine.
I just want to be assured. I want to be assured certain good games. Like, we as a nation all watched Iowa, Nebraska like 2 years ago because it was the only game on that Black Friday, and it's like, well, we're all off work. It's 1 PM and there's football, and it was just an awful game. It was an amazing game, but it was like 12-10 or something, I want to say. But yeah, so I want some good games guaranteed on that Black Friday.
There you go. Matt Green, college football week 14. How do we do this week going into our takeaways here?
It was a big week, sir. It was a massive week for the pick'em. Some things have changed in this past week. Chase Thomas on an absolute heater over the weekend, folks.
I figured teams out, man. It took me a little bit, but I figured out the way things were.
Hey, don't act like you haven't had your bad weeks, all right?
That's what I'm saying. I'm rounding into form. I'm like Nico Iamaleava of the podcasting game. I'm playing my best ball here in December.
Well, you went 5-7 against the spread last week, so I don't want to hear it.
That doesn't sound like December.
Oh, that's fair. It's also, this wasn't December either. It was November 30th.
Irrelevant.
29th. So you went 11-1 overall, and you 10-2 against the spread. Only 2 games you missed against the spread were the Georgia and Tennessee games. And then
and I remember you saying to me, you're like, you're picking a lot of blowouts here. You're picking on the pick 'em. I was like, I remember you saying something where you're like, you're picking some big spreads here.
Well, let's see. You may not have been right about the spread, the actual score, but you were right. Like, I mean, South Carolina, you had winning by 18. They won by 3. So don't get too cocky over there. LSU 35-17. What was that final?
We don't have to get deep into the weeds here. We can just say that Chase went 11-1 this weekend.
LSU did. They won that by like 17, though, right? That was actually may have been almost exactly right. Was that like 34-17 LSU Oklahoma? So you may have been exactly right on that one.
See?
But regardless, you went 11-1 overall, 10-2 against the spread. I went 8-4 overall, 4-8 against the spread. Worst week of the entire season, sir. Not my best work. So now you are only 2 games behind me against the spread. You made up 6 games this past week. So I'm 83-85-1 on the season. You are 81-87-1. And then now you've picked up 2 games. You got a 2-game lead on me overall, 114-55 to my 112-57 on the season. And Zeus, I told you Texas A&M was the official home dog of the week, but if Syracuse happened, I was giving him credit for it. I was close to picking it. You picked it. We gave Zeus credit for it. So Zeus,
did I not give you? I gave you so much grief. I was like, "This is the week to do it." You've been a Syracuse guy all year long, and I'm like, "This is Syracuse's time." What are you doing?
I did pick him against the spread, and in my in our like pick 'em, we do like you rank the games 1 to 10 like in confidence, and Syracuse was my 10-pointer, so I felt good about Syracuse covering the spread, but didn't know they had the juice to win it, and they definitely did. Jackson Meeks, the Georgia transfer, having himself a day in that one too. But yeah, Zeus now 13-10 on the season. And that's where we stand, sir.
I love it.
So the one game you missed, let me see. What will be the one you missed?
Oh, it was Ohio State.
Oh, it was Ohio State. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I get, which naturally leads us into this one. 3 touchdown favorites. Ryan Day. And people are still after the fact like, oh, you got to fire Ryan Day, Matt Green. No, you don't, because you're going to be in the playoff, and you might as well see what you can do here, because guess what? Ohio State can still win a national championship game. That's what's got to make this so frustrating if you're an Ohio State fan, is you just lost to Michigan 4 times in a row, and the most Ryan Day thing possible would be to make it all the way to the national title game and lose to, like, Texas or Georgia or something. And then he's like, what? What do you want me to do? Yeah, I lost to Michigan for the 4th time in a row, but I got us to the CFP national championship again. Like, I'm right here. I almost beat Georgia 2 years ago. I gave them the best game of anyone that year. Like, we were in position there. Like, things are pretty good. Yeah, you'd like to beat Michigan.
Win a rematch with Oregon, but lose to Texas or something like that.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's still a lot of possibilities for Ryan Day to make this even more weird. And look, man, it's a terrible loss for Ohio State, but I'm also like, it's just weird. I struggle to talk about Ohio State because I still think they're really good. I still think Michigan's just got in their head. It kind of feels like Tennessee and Florida for a while, and I think Florida had that over Georgia for a while. It just feels like they're just in their head, and it's a gigantic win for Michigan, but I still just don't think it's over for Ohio State, Matt Green.
Well, it's different when Florida had that over Georgia, because Georgia was like roughly the 10th best program in the country at the time, like in that neighborhood. Yeah. Like Ohio State's over here at the elite of the elite, and they just like Michigan's not even included in that conversation of the elite of the elite. Like, at least when Georgia's getting bullied by Bama, it's like, well, yeah, we're both at the big table. He's just like, he's better than us.
Well, what sucks if you're Ohio State now is you missed the 5 seed, because the 5 seed's the best seed in the playoff. And if you got a rematch with Oregon, you win this game and you lose to Oregon again, you get the 5 seed and you get the 12 seed, who might be Arizona State or Iowa State or Boise. And then you get to still avoid the number 1 overall seed. Like, the way the seeding works is the 5 seed is like the ideal spot. Like, that's kind of where you want to be. And they're going to be somewhere like now.
They're not getting the 5 seed.
Oh, no, that's over. The 5 seed's going to either Georgia or Penn State, I think, here. Or I guess Oregon or Texas if they lose. But
Notre Dame's probably could have that spot on lock though.
You can't give it to Notre Dame when they don't play that extra game and everything else. Like,
Yeah.
just no one in their right mind actually believes Notre Dame's better than any of those 4 teams. No one believes that, right?
Yeah, maybe. I think this is my comparison, right? Let me go full Colin Cowherd on you. Ryan Day is that friend you have that's kind of an asshole, but like you're cool with him. But then you hear someone else like talk about how big of an asshole this guy is, and you're like, yeah, I could see that. Like I could that checks. I think Ryan Day is like one of the elite coaches in college football. Like I'd probably rank him top 5. But if someone was like he sucks and he should be fired tomorrow, I'd be like, yeah, that's fair. Like I'm not gonna like die on the hill like defending Ryan Day. Like this is kind of crazy that he lost to this Michigan. Like he just like can't beat Michigan. I know they were also cheating in recent years, so there is that angle to it. They were beating a lot of teams.
That Gus Johnson call, man, what did he say about it? Where he's like,
oh yeah,
I was like,
something
what
like they
are
didn't
you doing?
cheat this time.
Yeah, I'm like, what? That's an outrageous thing to throw on the broadcast there, but yeah.
But so obviously they've had some really good teams, and they've been beating everybody. They've been playing just about until the college football playoff, and even beat everyone in the college football playoff last year. So you've had some, we're in the playoff too one of these years. Like Ohio State's had elite seasons. What is he, 66-10, I think now in his tenure at Ohio State? Like he's just been so elite, but he can't beat Michigan. Like this is the one. Like we kind of talked about with Kirby Smart, but not nearly to the extent, because obviously he had gotten over the hump. But like losing to Alabama and Saban's one thing, but you can't lose to Alabama and the new guy. And it's like, well, he did lose to Alabama and the new guy, but it's like it's still Alabama, and they're like a top 15 team, like maybe top 10. Like this was way different. Like this Michigan team has just been bad like all year. And their offense hasn't done anything against anybody. And I mean, I guess in fairness, their offense didn't really do anything in this game either. But how do you lose to an offense that does nothing? Like you're Ohio State. So it was just kind of inconceivable. And also, not that it's like the big deal or I'm like calling for his job or anything. Like that's, if Ohio State fans want to feel that way, want to fire him, like I just wouldn't like be like, no, that's a bad decision. You guys shouldn't do that. I'm not calling for his job, but I can understand it's a whole different dynamic for them. So, and also, I don't know if you saw like when all like the stuff is going down, like maybe it's just one clip and it's not what was happening the whole time, but he's like on the outside watching, as opposed to like Mike Norvell and Billy Napier, like getting guys out of there, like, get away, whatever, separating the players and stuff happening. It was very strange to me how it seemed, at least from the clip I saw, he's just kind of standing there in like disbelief of what just happened. Like it was very odd. It was like,
I think that's how I would be, by the way. I would be like in disbelief, like, what's going on? What do I even do here? Do I get involved? I'm a don't get involved guy. So I'd probably be like, I'm going to go. Good luck.
You're the head coach of this football team. Like you're in charge more than anyone on the field. Like in terms of authority wise, like there's cops on the field and you have more authority in that situation. Like, I don't know. It was a very strange dynamic. They started the trend, I guess, on the day. It's not like they're the first one that's ever done it, but like more flag planting than I've ever seen in a college football Saturday. It was just, I'll say this. I'm not like pro like fights happening, on the field. Like it's not like a good thing, but when you see it happen, you're like, man, this is what these rivalries are all about. You don't dislike it when it's happening, because it just like this is going to add to next year's pregame intro, right? Like the Ohio State, just the video clips, the B-roll of all the past scuffles with the David Boston and Charles Woodson stuff, like, and now this whole like whatever you want to call it, like scrummish, brouhaha. I don't know what the term was for what happened there. It wasn't like a real fight, but there's pepper spray. I don't know that it got heated enough for pepper spray, but yeah, it was just a crazy scene.
But to your point, it's good that rivalries still matter. Like those in-state, like it just made it felt really nice, because you're like, this college football has lost a lot. We're losing a lot of rivalries. Like Bedlam didn't happen this year, so I'll take it. Probably went a little bit too far in a lot of areas, but it is good to have animosity between fan bases. It was good to have animosity between Mike Loxley and James Franklin at the end of that game. And I thought James Franklin was 100% right in his post-game explainer of like, yeah, I've got the guys behind it. I've got 3s and 4s in, but they deserve to play actual football too. And if you can't stop them, that's your problem. That's not my problem. I don't like that idea of like you're running up the score if your second and third strings are still scoring. It's like, no, look, I'm doing everything I can, but those guys do actually deserve to play a normal style of football because they put in the work just like everybody else. So I don't know.
I've always thought that.
Yeah,
They deserve to run the offense and run the plays and everything. Like this is their one time to play. They just got to hand it off and run.
Yeah, like I don't think that's fair. Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. James Franklin was in the right there in Maryland, Penn State. But Texas, Matt Green, best win of the season. They got up to a hot start, and then they just blasted Texas A&M. Texas A&M could not do anything offensively against this Texas defense. I think Texas proved a lot of doubters wrong, and it's something that they had to do this weekend going to the SEC title game, but I don't know. I think we've talked about like all the different flaws on a lot of teams. Texas, this defense is legit because we wondered what is legit about this team. I still have some questions about Quinn Ewers. Arch Manning has some juice, man. Like that touchdown run and just how he is. Like Arch Manning has a lot of personality. Like Arch Manning has a lot of. He's gonna be fun because Arch Manning is he's an athlete. Like he's gonna be a very different Manning than folks have seen. He's not going to be in the pocket like Eli and Peyton here in his college and NFL career. Arch Manning's going to be moving around. Like Arch Manning is going to be fun. He's a dual threat. But I just thought Texas won this game. It reminded me of Georgia. Like they just went into a tough environment. The 4 stars and 5 stars flashed. Their walk-on safety flashed. They just looked like they were prepared for the moment. They did what they needed to do. They didn't have to get too flashy. They didn't go full Texas from the Texas that we've known over the last 10 to 15 years. And they just handled business. They just went in. They were the better team. They knew that they were the better team and just blocked out the noise and won a stable, normal football game over against another good team, but a team that's not ready for the moment in Texas A&M here.
Yeah, I'm with you there. This was by far their best win of the season, but I'm definitely not ready to say like they've like just figured everything out. Like I think the Georgia game is obviously going to be a way bigger test. Like this Texas A&M team, like let's not forget, like they're now 8-4, right? Like this wasn't like one of the best teams in the country by any means. Like they were having a really good season, but they had also like didn't have the strongest resume by any means. Like so they dominated this game, and man, Texas A&M like did all like the fluky stuff that had to happen to win, to upset a team that's clearly better than you too. Like you had the pick 6 that brought them back in the game. Like that's when, I mean, at that point it's 17-0 and Texas is about to make it 24-0, and you get like a 90-yard pick 6, and then you get the fumble when they're about to just drive, when they just drove right back down the field again and are about to make it 24-7. You get the fumble, and then late you get the blocked punt, and I felt like you could feel when they didn't return that punt for a touchdown, it was like they're not going to score. Like the guy recovered it at like the 18, his momentum kind of took him out of bounds. Like it just felt like if they didn't get the touchdown here, they're not going to actually score on this Texas defense. And I don't know what those play calls are. You got this super athletic quarterback and you decide to just run it up the middle multiple times in a row against a defensive line that's just better than you. So that didn't make any sense to me at all. Like I feel like Marcel Reed just being out in space, maybe finds a guy, maybe gets to the corner of the pylon, like just doing something with his athleticism was better than just trying to run it straight at Texas defensive line. But it's without a doubt a good win. Like Texas is a really good team, but this is the first really good win of the entire season. It's like kind of crazy that we're saying that in week 12, and this Texas A&M team is 8-4. So I will say, as someone who picked Texas A&M to win this game, I was without a doubt like learned something about Texas in this game, but I still don't know how good they are, because I think there's, as the rankings show, there's like 5 or 6 teams in the SEC that are probably better than Texas A&M. So it was a big time win for Texas, but I'm really curious to see what Texas Georgia is going to look like next week.
Absolutely. South Carolina Matt Green. Shane Beamer makes the post-game push. I mean, Lenore Sellers, I've been on him for months now. I think he's a legitimately good quarterback here. South Carolina's defense is legit. They steal one late in Death Valley. 9-3 Clemson going to the ACC title game. Still with their playoff opportunities right in front of them. They just beat SMU in the ACC title game this weekend. But South Carolina, 9-3, and it's an interesting conversation, and it's an awkward one, because I think you and I could agree, or reasonable minds could say, South Carolina, I would say on a neutral site, I would pick them over Ole Miss, and I don't even know if I'd pick them over Ole Miss. Because I can't quit Ole Miss. But Alabama, yeah, I think if you play that game again at this point in the year and on a neutral site, South Carolina might be favored there. But the games happen.
Octaves? You hear the octaves? Your voice went up there, though. I don't know how much you really believe that.
It's one of those things where it's almost like I don't like parsing hairs here with like Alabama and Ole Miss, because I think Alabama, Ole Miss, and South Carolina are like about the same, which makes this all more complicated, as I think those three are pretty close, and it's like splitting hairs and you're trying to figure out who's the best between the three of them. I'm just annoyed because I think all three are better than Indiana. I think all three are better than the second ACC team that gets in. I think all three are better than Boise State. I think all three are better than Arizona State or Iowa State or whoever. That's what I think annoys me more than anything, is I think we're going to have multiple teams that could win the national championship this year that are going to be left out. And part of it's because they lost games they shouldn't have lost. Like Ole Miss, don't lose Kentucky, and you don't have this problem at home. But South Carolina, if you just win one of those games close, if you take care of business against LSU at home, as you should have, like you had opportunities. Yeah, there was some ref stuff that was not great, but it was still at home, and if you close that game out, I think there's no question you're in the playoff right now down the stretch. So they had their opportunities. It's not like it's been an unfair circumstance because they have lost 3 games. But if I'm a South Carolina fan, this is like the ultimate just groin punch, because you're like, man, everything came together this year. Like our offensive line wasn't good, really bad out of the gate. We had some heartbreaking, terrible losses, and we're playing awesome football on this huge winning streak. We just beat our rival again on the road. Like this is not fair. Just put us in, because I don't know if this is sustainable next year. Like this is not a perennial. We're going 9-3, 10-2 every year now under Beamer. Like everything fell into focus for the Gamecocks down the stretch, and I think they might just have one loss too many.
Yeah, that's definitely possible. Like it's really interesting. So the committee, I feel like we talk about the committee like they're these, I don't know, these elders, like these council elders. With great power comes great responsibility. We've seen the committee do things like, yeah, Florida State's 13-0, but Jordan Travis is out, so we don't really think you're that good. So we've seen them like kind of change their mind about things. I can't get over South Carolina getting blasted in Williams-Brice Stadium by Ole Miss. Like no one's really talking about that. And people to this week on December 1st, it's December 2nd now. December 2nd, you're listening to this, are putting Alabama ahead of Ole Miss as if Alabama won the West and beat Ole Miss. Like they did not play each other. Alabama probably has a better resume than Ole Miss, but Alabama has worse losses than Ole Miss. I can make an argument for South Carolina losing by 2 at Alabama. I think Bryant-Denny Stadium's worth a solid 3 points or so, right? Like they lost on the road. Ole Miss dominated South Carolina in Williams-Brice Stadium. So I can't like overlook that, even though I feel like South Carolina is playing the best of those teams right now. So it's just interesting to me how you have Alabama, and you chose Miami too. Like you have Alabama. Well, I guess this isn't the committee. This is the AP poll. But like it's funny the distinction that's being made between Alabama, Ole Miss, and South Carolina right now, because I feel like they're right there together, like you're saying. But the AP poll has Miami ahead of Ole Miss, but behind the other two, or Arizona State ahead of 2 of them, but behind Alabama. Like, so it's kind of interesting how we're somehow arbitrarily separating these 3 lost teams. And on the Jordan Travis kind of point of like taking in added context, they're all 3 lost teams, And can we take into account that one of the games South Carolina lost, they were just straight up robbed by the officials? Like LSU, they go up 2
They weren't robbed,
scores
though.
against.
They had
What?
more times. Like, every play matters. Like, it wasn't a great officiating game, but they had
pick six with 5 minutes left in the game that puts them up 2 touchdowns. That was overturned because of a quote unquote roughing the passer where the dude shoved the quarterback during the return. Like, I still don't understand how that negates the interception. Like, they were straight up robbed in that LSU game. Like, and I feel like they're a 10-2 team at that point. I don't know. The committee can they do things like that? They're supposed to take everything into context, right?
I mean, it all matters, but also, can you really put them at, like, there's no excuse. You can't. South Carolina fans, I think you should be in the field because I do think you're one of the 12 best teams in the country right now. You can't be ahead of Ole Miss and Bama. You just can't. I saw those games happen. I can't, especially with how the Ole Miss game went. You just can't make that case. And Ole Miss, that Georgia win is bigger than any South Carolina win right now. Like, you can't. Like, we go down this road, it doesn't end with South Carolina getting in. It ends with either Alabama or Ole Miss. And I still would lean Ole Miss because I still think Ole Miss is the best of the three. But that is I don't know. I mean, I don't think it even matters, Matt Green, because this leads into our final point here of our CFP rankings projection for Tuesday. I don't think I think all 3 of these SEC teams are going to be on the outside looking in. Don't you?
I do not think so. I think one of these gets in. I think.
So who gets out? Left out.
So
here.
this is my rankings prediction. I got if you can look at your doc there. These 9 teams I have underlined. I think these 9 teams are locks. And I think there's one hot take in here amongst most people, but I think all of these 9 teams are in. Oregon, Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame, Georgia, Ohio State, Tennessee, Indiana, and SMU.
You think SMU's a lock even if they lose?
Absolutely, SMU should be a lock because Tennessee is a lock.
They are a lock.
In my opinion, they should be a lock. So I would dare the committee to not put them in if they lose the ACC championship. For one, this is the cynical aspect to me of why SMU gets in is because if Clemson wins this game, so those are the 9 teams that are in. Then the other one, you have the number 10 is Boise State, and then 11 is the Big 12 champion, and then you have number 12. And if Clemson wins, the committee does not have to make any decisions at all. And they can just be like, well, Clemson's ACC championship, they got in. And then SMU had to play that extra conference game, and we're not going to punish them for playing in the conference championship game. Boom. That's a clear 12 teams. You take SMU out of there, and now, okay, who's better? Miami, Alabama, South Carolina, or Ole Miss? Like, how are you going to determine? How do you determine who's better between Alabama and Ole Miss? Like, give me one logical thing we can say about Alabama and Ole Miss. Like, I think Alabama's schedule is a little tougher this year, but the schedule being tough doesn't explain why they got blown out by Oklahoma and lost at Vanderbilt. It's like those weren't the tough games on the schedule.
Look at them on Saturday against Auburn. They didn't look great. Like, it's one of those, like, Auburn was right there. They just hung around, and Jalen Milroe is just, he's fine. Jalen Milroe is just such an up and down guy that, like, I don't know. It's so interesting because you would rather have Jackson Dart or Lenora Sellers right now than Jalen Milroe, right?
Than Lenora Sellers. If I just making my fantasy team, I think I'd have Lenora Sellers over everybody.
Well, I mean, of those 3, you would have Dart and Sellers over Milroe, right?
Oh yeah, I would.
Right? Like, I
don't know. I think I might roll the dice weekend as I might get the good Jalen Milroe. That's absolutely unbeatable.
It's true. But that's the whole thing. Is like, do Bama fans want this? Do they want to continue going down this ride? Because I just feel like they're tired. I feel like they're just like, let's flip the page. I just feel like, I was talking to cousin Kyle about it, where he's a Bama alum, and he's in the group chat, and I think he said something about, like, just time to, I don't want the committee. I want us to rest. This is something along those lines, where it's like, it's good. We've won our titles, basically. And I think there's Bama fan where they're like, we won a lot, and this season hasn't been very fun. And we enjoyed the Georgia win, and we enjoyed the LSU win, but we know this team can't win a title, so we're ready to get off this ride. We're ready to get off this offensive roller coaster
They know
ride.
what a title team does from September to November, and this team did not do it.
Yes.
And that's my biggest thing. How I was kind of telling you about this was a perfect year for the 4-team playoff. Like, think about how clean this 4-team playoff is. We get the winner of Penn State, Oregon is in. The winner of Texas, Georgia is in. Notre Dame is in. Then maybe Oregon loses and they get that 4 spot. Maybe Tennessee gets that 4 spot. Maybe SMU. That's probably what happens. SMU, if they're a 12-1 conference ACC champ, they probably get that 4 spot. Like, there's not like a bunch of teams that feel like they're national championship contenders. Like, if Georgia loses to Texas, you beat them earlier in the year, but it's the 3rd loss. Like, that's usually when it ends. Like, Georgia having the toughest schedule in the country is the only reason why they're a 2-loss team that's in a position of win and you get to go to the college football playoff. If it's a 4-team model, like, the 12 team is going to be fun seeing a bunch of matchups that we don't usually see, but like, this would have just worked out perfectly fine, because I feel like everyone's talking like so outraged about Alabama. Like, you're going to put, like, I heard Tom Fornelli, like, just go on this whole thing about just the most cynical rant you can imagine of just about, oh, well, it's about TV dollars and all this, and Alabama, it's got that script A. That's why they're in the playoff, and that's the only reason anyone's talking about them. Who are you putting in ahead of them? It's 12 teams. Like, Ole Miss, maybe. South Carolina, maybe. They're also from the SEC. Like, it's not like we're just disrespecting all these 11-1 teams and 10-2 teams around the country so that we can put in Alabama. It's like, this is what the expansionists asked for. They wanted a bunch of teams to get in, and what's going to happen? The years where Ohio State gets exposed, they still get in the playoff. The years Alabama is exposed and they're not that good, they're still in the playoff, because this is the system you wanted. Like, in the 4-team model, that's the model that Ohio State's season ended on Saturday. Like, and I think most people wanted Ohio State's season to end on Saturday because it felt like Ohio State's season ended on Saturday. It felt like Ryan Day's life ended on Saturday. Like, no joking about that, because obviously he talked about how bad it was for him in his personal life and shit after losing to Michigan. But I don't know. It's just like, we all know what a championship team is, and there's just so many teams that are going to be playing in this postseason. And maybe it's better than a bunch of bowl games, having less bowl games that people are opting out of and stuff like that. But I don't know. It's this is what the expansionists wanted, and now Alabama's got as good a shot as any right there to get in.
I mean, that's another conversation for another day. Because if I was CFB commissioner, guess what's out? Bowl games. They're gone. Like, we just need to go at, like, we're expanding the playoff anyway. Let's just go at it. Like, have you heard any bowl talk? Like, has anyone talked about the bowls at all? Every broadcast is the playoff. Every broadcast is the playoff. Like, that's all we're talking about. Let's not pretend the bowl games. And then with all the opt-outs and the portal opening up here and just there's no fixing it. Like, it's over. Like, I love bowl season. I love the bowls.
Yeah.
It's over. Like,
and Julian Humphrey hitting the portal, not even going to play in the SEC championship. We didn't mention that. Like, that's just kind of crazy to me. I think he basically lost his starting spot
against Tennessee,
first drive against Tennessee. And so this guy, I don't know. I just hitting the portal before the season actually ends. I get we're going to see some terrible portal stuff of like guys who play on teams that are in the college football playoff, but this is their hands are tied. Like, you got to do what's best for your career, and if you got to enroll in a new school, maybe move somewhere across the country in January. Like, it is what it is. Like, that's the system that the powers that be set up in college football.
Well, it's not even the powers that be. It's just education. Like, the only way to fix this is to get rid of the school part of it.
I'm saying the powers that be in doing this new calendar with college football and everything being rushed the way it is. Like, it wasn't always this way of guys opting out of postseason games.
Well, they fixed one part of it, which is they did early National Signing Day, which is now signing day. So at least teams finalize their high school roster, and then they go to the portal. Huh?
See, I think the early signing day, which is this week, by the way.
Yeah,
right?
No, that's good, because now teams know what they're bringing in, so they know how they can approach the portal. So they're doing basically the draft before free agency now. So that makes a lot more sense. Is that teams are now finalizing their roster this week in terms of their draft. They're doing their draft this week, and then they know how to approach the portal because all these guys have signed on the dotted line. They know what they're bringing in, so they can attack the portal.
If no coaches ever change teams, then that would be perfect. But the fact that you're going to have a completely new staff that's going to come in after next week, after people start getting fired and stuff, like, and signing day has already happened, like, it's just going to be just terrible. If you have a solid foundation with a coach that's been there for a while, no issues at all for you. But you have a first year head coach. I don't know how the new guys, I don't know how they're managing this. And you're seeing a lot of mixed bags, and some guys having great year ones and some guys being terrible. So I don't know. I've gone off before about the recruiting calendar and all that, but I
don't know. I think this is better. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I do think having early National Signing Day being the new signing day is better than what they've had, because at least coaches know, like going into the portal, what they have coming in from the draft.
Sir, I'm going to take you back to 2013. You remember Robert Kimdichie, Laramie Tunsil, these guys announcing on signing day? That was the golden era, not just if you're an Ole Miss fan. But that was the golden era of signing days, sir, when it was on the first Wednesday of February and it was a national holiday. This new signing day now, I hate it, man. I hate it. I'm glad I got to participate in it one year, Mecole Hardman and Derek Brown's announcements. But, man, I hate that signing day is no longer like the event that it once was. Like,
I don't know. With how recruiting is now, I'm good. Like, I'm good. Let's just get through it.
It's just, it's terrible, man. Like, I remember, like, Roquan Smith when he committed to Georgia, like, whoever the linebacker coach or DC at UCLA, like, took a Falcons job, like, that day, and that's why he ended up not going to UCLA and ended up going to Georgia. Like, it's just, like, don't make these coaches lie to these kids. They're going to look for a new job. Like, that's the business. They're going to try to get a better job each offseason. Like, just let the kids have all the information. Oh, this is the coaching staff. Okay, this is what it's going to be, and I can make my decision accordingly. It's just terrible that you had to sign first week of December, and then who knows what the hell is about to happen to your program in the next month or two, because, like, the NFL carousel, that starts in February, and then that's going to have effects in the college game. So I don't know. That's my 2 cents, but it's just, there's way too many moving parts, I feel like, for high schoolers to be signing this week. Like, dudes can still enroll before the early signing period. Like, dudes could still enroll early, and you're just, you didn't sign the national letter of intent or whatever, but you're in school now. So I don't know why the early signing period is even necessary. It's great if you are one of those established coaches and you can just get all the hay in the barn and guys are signed and can't flip, but I don't know. I feel like it puts the ones that don't have an established coach at a huge disadvantage.
Is there any more college football than that, though? The haves and the have-nots. That's part of the sport, man.
It's funny to me, dude. I actually had an Alabama fan. A buddy of mine called me on Saturday, and he's just like, dude, there's just so much parity in the sport this year. Like, people say that, like, yeah, it's awesome. A lot of good teams. He's like, I hate it. What is this? What is happening? It's supposed to be the haves and the have-nots. We're supposed to have better players than 99% of the other teams. What is happening?
I don't know. I mean, look at it, but we say all that, and let me pull up the 2023 or 2024. Well, I guess this would be 20. Wow, this will be the 2025 class as of right now. Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, Texas, Auburn, LSU, Oregon, Michigan, Tennessee, Miami. How many of those sound like those up and coming new starts into the top 10 of the recruiting cycle? A lot of upstarts, a lot of parity in the top end. I haven't seen those in the top of the recruiting rankings every year for the entire 21st century.
A new start. I see what you did there. That's true, but that doesn't tell the whole story anymore because of the portal being what it is. It's like, yeah, you have those recruiting rankings, and then we just got a couple starters from a couple other Power 4 teams. So it doesn't necessarily tell you everything.
I don't even know if it's I
know Alabama still has really good.
Do you know what I think it is? And it's kind of what Saban's talking about. It's developing. Like, I don't think guys have, like, having so many guys in your program for multiple years and so many blue chippers in your program for multiple years. It's hard for parity to exist because you have such an advantage when you have a roster full of guys who are super talented and have been in the program for years. Now we have just so many in the portal. You don't get to do a bunch of due diligence on these guys. Like, you don't have time to do a deep dive into whether or not they're going to fit your program, this, that, and the other, because you're trying to get them in before anybody else does. And it's just this rash wave of a talent accumulation. So you don't really know what you have. Like, high school recruiting, you know what you have. That's why it's the safest way to build a roster. If you can do it and you have the funds to do it, is because you have years of talking to this kid, talking to the family, knowing his work ethic, knowing his coaches, all this kind of stuff. You know what you're getting. At least you think you have a much better idea of what you're getting to develop. when you go in the portal, you just don't know. Like you're gonna hit on someone's like Jared Verse, and sometimes you're gonna miss on Marvin Jones Jr. Like it's year over year. You don't know who's gonna make the difference, who's gonna be a big time player for you, and you hope for the best. But it's just I think that's
true.
I think that's a problem, is that you don't know what you're getting with the portal for a lot of these programs.
That's true, but when you're getting Caleb Downs out of the portal, like, you know exactly what you're getting, and you're getting a stud at one of your safety spots that you're not going to even have to think about the rest of the year. Like, there's still those impact players in the portal, maybe not many as good as Caleb Downs, but it just speaks to what Alabama fans are used to. They understand that there's a lot of good players that are all over the place. They're just used to having the absolute best instead of like in the same group of the best. Like, so it's a learning curve for them.
There you go. Well, that's all I've got, Matt Green. Anything else you want to hit on before we get out of here?
I think that's all I got, sir. It's gonna be a crazy week. Georgia and Texas. I think this is the preseason matchup that the media predicted in the SEC this year. So this is not the road we expected necessarily for this chaos season, but it is the two teams that were expected to be here. So they always say it's tough to beat a good team twice. I think I saw a stat. I'll refresh this stat if I'm wrong on our Wednesday show, but I think it was like in rematches, the team that won the first one is 5-2 in the SEC championship all time. So, we'll see. Maybe Georgia's got that in their favor, maybe not, but we shall see, sir.
I love it. Matt Green, always a pleasure, and I will talk to you in a couple days.
Yes, sir.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.